Welcome to the week of January 26th, a week of very familiar workouts, and they are familiar because they're effective and they serve a very important purpose. The high quality workout this week, mile repeats at 85% or threshold, and a little description of 85% threshold. At the top end of your purely aerobic energy production is typically 85% in a well-trained runner. It might be 80% if you're not in great shape yet, but for most people, it's getting close to 85%. So we think in terms of VO2 or heart rate at 85%, but also threshold to where you're breathing hard, but you're still aerobic, you're still comfortable, it's still sustainable. At 85%, everything's good. At 90%, your fuel is now mixed. You're having some anaerobic energy production, so you're producing some lactic acid, but it's not so much that you have to slow down. You can sustain the pace, but it gets harder and harder. And that's when you get closer to somewhere between 5K and 10K pace. And then when you get to 95%, the fun is gone. This is definitely the rough stuff that you hope is over soon. If it's not a race day, it's typically going to be a relatively short interval if we're saying 95%. You don't see 95% too much from me because when we get to that level, typically I just say hard or fast because we're not taking time to look at the watch. We're just going as hard as we can go. 95% feels a whole lot like 100%. And yes, mathematically it works this way as well. But to get to 100%, you have to spend some time at 95%. So that's kind of where we are. We're looking at 85%. If you're closer to 90%, especially if you are fit and you've now accumulated lots of good hard workouts, that's fine as well. The reason we're doing this is we're going to build stamina at a sustainable speed. We could do these, and we have done these, 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off, half on, half off, some workouts that you recall from recent weeks. Now we're going a mile. And at 85%, a mile isn't all that difficult. Getting to 85% is the hard part. Once you're there, you just have to keep your foot on the gas pedal and you're fine. It doesn't require a lot of great exertion towards the end to maintain it. Once you get there, it's relatively easy to maintain. That doesn't mean that you're not giving a good effort, but you don't have to feel like you're in race mode. We're trying to push your threshold north because we know if we can push your threshold north, you can go faster for a longer period of time, or you can relax a little bit more at that 80, 85%, so half marathon, or that 75, 80% marathon for many of you. You can sustain that longer. We want to be able to run race pace at the lowest possible energy cost possible so we can do it longer and finish strong. And then we're also, because we're doing mile repeats rather than half mile repeats, we're extending the muscular tension, and that's the limiting factor in the longer races, especially once you get over half marathon. So in Training Peaks, many of you have a workout option, and if it's not there, you can still do this if you feel like you're ready. And that is replacing the last mile. So if you have 4 times a mile, if you want to do 3 times a mile, and then that last mile, replace it with 4 times 400 meters at 90%. So we're definitely going harder, definitely using some anaerobic energy production, and then 200-meter recovery jog. You can do that. If you're thinking about racing in a few weeks and you don't feel like you have gears, you feel like once you get past a certain pace, it's really difficult, that would probably be a good idea for you to do. So either way, most of you getting at least 3 miles, if not 4 or 5 miles worth of quality in that workout. Come to the moderate quality workout. Steady state run 75 to 85%, which is that high end aerobic that we talk so much about. And yes, we're kind of after the same thing here. We're accumulating time spent between 75 and 85%. So over here, hopefully you have the bulk of your quality mileage is close to 85%. Over here, we want to accumulate as much of that as possible at 85%. It's written as 75 and up. So if your legs aren't quite cooperative enough to get your heart rate up, or you're a little bit tired and you need to kind of progress through that 75, 80, 85%, you can do that. But if we look at all the numbers, and God knows if we are short on anything in life, it's not numbers. Between Garmin, Training Peaks, and whatever else you're using, we know we have plenty of numbers. some of which are helpful, most of which are numbers. But one of the numbers that we do want to keep an eye on is how much time or distance did you spend between 75 and 85%. When I tell people there's 3 primary ways to get better, one of them is spending more time at high end aerobic, that's 75 to 85%. So we're giving you a good chance to do that this week. So that's pretty important stuff. Not the most exciting workouts we're ever going to do, but again, they're familiar and frequent because they're so effective. Long run this week is an endurance long run where most of you are adding a mile or 2 to what you did 2 weeks ago. And we have basically 5 to go. I've been doing this since December, and I've been talking about it since December. This one is scheduled for most of you on Saturday, January 31st. So we have January 31st, February 14 and 28, March 14 and 28. That's the end of the long runs. And then the next time you're going to run long, for many of you, is Carmel Marathon or Half Marathon or Boston Marathon, that Monday of that 3-day weekend. So this is why I've been asking for race schedules. If you're a personal coaching client and I'm writing based on what your race schedule is, make sure that I have that. There should be a box at the end of your updated plan. So if you look however many weeks ahead we have planned, in that next week, there should be a box sitting there that says notes and race schedule. If I don't have a full race schedule, let me know that now. That way I can move these around, because I know looking at this date, many of you are racing Polar Bear on the 28th, so you won't be running long on the 28th. But I don't want to give up, at least for the marathoners, I don't want to give up that long run. So we're going to find another day to do it. Also, when we go from March 28th to April 18th or 20th, that's 3 weeks, so we have a week to play with. We can add something else there as well. So kind of getting down to it. I know the weather hasn't been the most appealing to go do long runs, but this is the business we have chosen. As I say all the time, and I know we talked about this on Tuesday before the run, if you want to race in great weather, you have to train in either really cold or really hot to get to that great weather in the spring or the fall. So there's your week. More great building.